Absolutely useless. The words echoed through our upscale suburban home as my mother threw my college acceptance letter in my face. NYU? For finance? What a waste of money. I stood in our pristine kitchen, watching the letter flutter to the marble floor, my dreams of studying finance scattered like confetti at my feet. At 18, I had thought getting into one of the best business schools in the country would finally make my parents proud. I was wrong. Emma. My father's cold voice cut through the air. We've discussed this. You're going to work at the restaurant like your sister Catherine. College is an unnecessary expense for someone like you. Someone like me. Those words had defined my entire existence in the Morrison family. Catherine, my older sister, was the golden child, the one who had dutifully followed our parents' path into the family's chain of high-end restaurants. And me. I was the dreamer who dared to want something different. But I got a partial scholarship, I protested, picking up the crumpled letter. I've been saving from my part-time job. I can make this work. My mother laughed, that sharp, dismissive sound I'd grown to hate. Your little bookkeeping job at that tiny bank? Please. Catherine made more in tips last month than you make in a year. What they didn't know was that my little bookkeeping job at First Metro Bank had taught me more about finance than they could imagine. While they saw me filing papers and answering phones, I was absorbing everything about banking, investments, and the power of money. I'm going, I said quietly, but firmly, whether you support me or not. My father's face turned that dangerous shade of red I knew too well. If you walk out that door, don't expect any help from us. Ever. Richard, my mother touched his arm, her voice suddenly honey-sweet and poisonous. Maybe we're approaching this wrong. Emma, darling, think about it. Catherine is already managing 2 restaurants. In a few years, she could be running the whole chain. But you, what can you do with a finance degree? I looked at them both. Really looked at them. My mother in her designer clothes, my father with his expensive watch. Both of them so sure they knew what was best for everyone. They'd built their restaurant empire from nothing true, but they'd stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped seeing possibilities beyond their own narrow view of success. I can build something of my own, I answered. The slap came so fast, I didn't see it coming. My mother's hand left a stinging impression on my cheek. Ungrateful child, after everything we'd given you. Given me? I touched my burning face. What exactly have you given me except constant criticism and comparisons to Catherine? G-E-T-L-U-T. My mother screamed, her perfectly maintained facade cracking completely. If you're so sure you can make it on your own, then go. Don't come crawling back when you fail. My father stood silent, his face stone. Behind him, I saw Catherine in the doorway, watching with a mixture of shock and smug satisfaction. I walked upstairs to my room, pulled out the bag I'd packed weeks ago, just in case this day came, and grabbed the small lockbox where I had been storing my savings. 4 years of working every spare hour, saving every penny, preparing for this moment. When I came back downstairs, my mother was crying dramatically while my father comforted her. Catherine still stood in the doorway, now openly smirking. You'll regret this, she said softly as I passed. Nobody makes it without family backing them up. I paused at the front door, looking back at my so-called family one last time. You're wrong, and someday I'll prove it. That night, I checked into a small hotel near the bank where I worked. My manager, Mr. Harrison, had always seen something in me that my family missed. When I told him what happened, he didn't hesitate. The bank has a program, he said, for promising employees who want to further their education. Full tuition reimbursement in exchange for working here during school and 2 years after graduation. Are you interested? Was I interested? It was better than anything I had hoped for. Yes, I said firmly. I'm very interested. What my family didn't know, what they had never bothered to learn, was that I had already been taking online finance courses through the bank's training program. I had certifications in investment banking, risk management, and financial analysis. My little bookkeeping job had given me access to a world of knowledge they couldn't imagine. The next 4 years passed in a blur of classes, work, and relentless self-improvement. While Catherine posted photos of herself at restaurant openings and industry parties, I was learning how banks really worked, how money moved, how power was built. I graduated from NYU summa cum laude, with job offers from top investment firms. But I stayed at First Metro Bank, working my way up from department to department. I learned everything about bank operations, from loans to acquisitions. 10 years after my parents threw me out, I founded my own investment company, Phoenix Financial. We specialized in buying struggling banks, restructuring them, and turning them into profitable powerhouses. My family's name and their precious restaurants meant nothing in the world I now inhabited. 5 years after that, an opportunity arose that I couldn't resist. First Commonwealth Bank, my parents' primary lender, was struggling. Their stock was down, their leadership was weak, and they were ripe for takeover. I sat in my corner office, looking at the acquisition proposal on my desk. My parents had no idea that their loyal family bank was about to become mine. They had no idea that their daughter, the one they'd thrown away as useless, now controlled billions in assets. They would find out soon enough. According to the reports, the Morrison Restaurant Group had several large loans coming due. Loans they were struggling to pay thanks to Catherine's mismanagement and their own refusal to modernize. Soon, they would come begging for extensions, for better terms, for mercy from a bank they thought they knew. Instead, they would find me. I picked up the phone and dialed my chief operating officer. Janet, execute Project Homecoming. It's time to buy First Commonwealth Bank. The wheel had turned full circle. The useless daughter they'd thrown away was about to become their bank's owner. And unlike them, I understood exactly how to use that power. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out that crumpled NYU acceptance letter, the one I'd retrieved from the floor 15 years ago. I'd kept it as a reminder of where I started. Now it would serve as a reminder of how far I'd come. And my family? They were about to learn that sometimes the people you dismiss as useless turn out to be the most powerful of all. The takeover of First Commonwealth Bank went exactly as planned. The press announcement hit the morning news. Phoenix Financial acquires First Commonwealth in $2.8 billion deal. My parents wouldn't understand the significance yet. They never read the financial news. But they would soon enough. I sat in my new office at First Commonwealth's headquarters, reviewing their loan portfolio. The Morrison Restaurant Group's files lay open on my desk. 6 restaurants struggling with debt, outdated business models, and declining profits. My sister Catherine's signature was on most of the recent documents, each one showing increasingly desperate attempts to secure more funding. Ms. Williams? My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Catherine Morrison is here for her 2 p.m. meeting about the loan extensions. I smiled, remembering my sister's last words to me 15 years ago. Send her in. Catherine strutted in, designer heels clicking on the marble floor. She hadn't changed much, still perfectly groomed, still radiating that air of entitled confidence. She stopped short when she saw me, her perfectly maintained facade cracking. "Emma?" she whispered, then quickly recovered. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Catherine." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Please, sit down. We have a lot to discuss." If this is some kind of joke, she remained standing, clutching her expensive handbag like a shield. "No joke." I opened the Morrison Group's file. "I see you're here to discuss extending the loans on restaurants 3 through 6. They're significantly underwater, aren't they?" The color drained from her face. You work here?" "Actually," I smiled, "I own the bank. Phoenix Financial completed the acquisition this morning. Didn't you read the news?" She sank into the chair, her legs seemingly giving out. "That's impossible. You're nothing. You ran away." "I didn't run away, Catherine. I built something. Something much bigger than a chain of overpriced restaurants." I pulled out the latest financial reports. "Speaking of which, let's discuss these numbers. They're quite concerning." "These meetings are supposed to be with Mr. Anderson," she protested weakly. "Mr. Anderson retired this morning. All major loan decisions now go through me." I studied my sister's face as the reality of her situation sank in. "You're 3 months behind on payments for 4 locations. Your revenue is down 40% year over year. And," I pulled out another document, "you've been hiding losses from our loan officers." "That's fraud, Catherine." She straightened in her chair, trying to summon her old arrogance. "You wouldn't dare call in our loans. We're family." "Family?" I laughed softly. "Isn't that what you said the night I left? Nobody makes it without family backing them up." "Well, I did make it. And now your family's financial future depends on my decisions." "I'll tell Mom and Dad," she threatened. "They won't stand for this." "Please do." I handed her a business card. "In fact, I'd like all of you to come to a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. We need to discuss the future of the Morrison Restaurant Group." Catherine stood up, shaking with rage. "You planned this. All these years, you were just waiting for revenge." "No, Catherine. I built an empire while you were coasting on our parents' success. The fact that I now control your loans? That's just poetic justice." After she stormed out, I called my assistant. "Janet, when my parents arrive tomorrow, have security bring them directly to the boardroom. I think it's time for a proper family reunion." That evening, my phone exploded with messages. Catherine had clearly run straight to our parents. "Mom, how dare you? After everything we did for you." "Dad, this is unacceptable. We'll take our business elsewhere." "Catherine, you'll regret this. Nobody treats us this way." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I reviewed the restructuring plan I'd prepared for their restaurants. They had 2 choices: accept my terms and save their business, or refuse and lose everything. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a Tom Ford suit that cost more than 3 months of Catherine's salary. The boardroom windows offer a sweeping view of the city, my city now, in many ways. At exactly 9 a.m., the doors opened. My parents walked in, followed by Catherine. They stopped short when they saw me standing at the head of the table. "Good morning," I said calmly. "Please, sit down." "Emma?" My father's voice shook with barely controlled rage. "What is the meaning of this?" "This," I gestured to the documents laid out before each place, "is a meeting to discuss the future of your company. Your very troubled company." "We'll take our business to another bank," my mother snapped. "With your credit history? Your fraudulent reporting?" I picked up a file. "No bank in the city will touch you. especially after I filed these discrepancy reports with the regulatory board. Catherine went pale. She knew exactly what those reports contained. Every fake number, every hidden loss, every lie she told to keep the loans flowing. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "Try me." I sat down, opened the main proposal. "However, I'm prepared to offer you a deal. One that will save your restaurants and your reputation." My father's face had turned that dangerous shade of red again. "You think you can blackmail us? Your own family?" "Blackmail?" I raised an eyebrow. "No, I'm offering you a business solution. The same kind I've offered to dozens of other failing companies. The fact that you're my family doesn't change the numbers." I pushed copies of the proposal across the table. Phoenix Financial will assume control of 51% of the Morrison Restaurant Group. We'll inject new capital, modernize your operations, and restructure your debt. In return, you'll step down from day-to-day management. Step down. My mother's voice rose to a shriek. "This is our company." "Not anymore," I replied calmly. "Right now. It's a failing company drowning in debt. I'm offering you a chance to save what's left." Catherine was frantically flipping through the proposal. This would make you our boss." "Yes," I agreed. "Ironic, isn't it? The useless daughter you kicked out now controls your financial future." My father stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. "You ungrateful little." "Careful," I cut him off. "Remember where you are. Remember who owns this building, this bank, and soon, your restaurants." He froze, finally seeing me clearly. Not as his disappointing younger daughter, but as the powerful executive I'd become. "Why?" my mother asked, tears streaming down her face. "Why do this to us?" I stood up slowly, placed my hands on the table. "Because 15 years ago, you threw me away like I was nothing. You were so sure I would fail without your support. Instead, I built something greater than anything you could imagine." I walked to the window, looked out at the city. "Your choice is simple. Accept my offer and save your legacy, or refuse and lose everything. You have until the end of business today to decide." "You can't do this," Catherine protested weakly. I turned back to them, smiled coldly. "I already have. The papers are drawn up. The board is waiting for your response. The only question is whether you're smart enough to take the deal." As they sat there, staring at the documents that would change everything, I thought about that night 15 years ago, about the daughter they'd thrown away as useless, about how power shifts when you least expect it. "One more thing," I added as I walked to the door. "When you make your decision, remember this. I learned everything I know about business by watching you. The only difference is, I learned from your mistakes instead of repeating them." I left them there, surrounded by papers that proved just how far their useless daughter had come. The wheel had turned full circle, and now they had to choose: accept my authority or lose everything they'd built. Either way, I had already won. They signed the papers at 4:59 p.m. I watched from my office as my father's hand trembled slightly, signing away control of the empire he built. My mother dabbed at her eyes with an expensive handkerchief while Catherine stared blankly at the wall, her perfect world completely shattered. "Congratulations," my lawyer said smoothly, gathering the documents. "Phoenix Financial is now the majority owner of the Morrison Restaurant Group." "What happens now?" my father asked, his voice hollow. I stood up from behind my desk. "Now we save your company, whether you like it or not." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of changes. I brought in my own management team to audit every aspect of the restaurant chain. The results were worse than even I had expected. They've been operating on an outdated business model for years, Janet reported, spreading spreadsheets across my desk. No online presence, no modern marketing, no adaptation to changing customer preferences. It's like they're stuck in 1995. Catherine's been hiding the real numbers, my CFO added. They're not just underwater, they're drowning. Without our intervention, they would have collapsed within 6 months. I nodded, unsurprised. My sister had always been better at appearances than actual management. Start the restructuring. Full modernization, complete menu overhaul, new marketing strategy, and schedule a full board meeting for next week. The board meeting was the first time I'd seen my family since they signed the papers. They sat at the far end of the table, looking small and defeated. Catherine had lost her designer polish. There were shadows under her eyes, and her clothes looked rumpled. The Morrison Restaurant Group is fundamentally sound, I began, standing at the head of the table. The brand has value, the locations are prime, and there's a loyal customer base. The problem isn't the business, it's how it's been run. I clicked through slides showing the changes we planned. Modern point-of-sale systems, updated menus focusing on local ingredients and current food trends, a robust online ordering platform, and a complete marketing overhaul. This isn't what our customers want, my father interrupted. They come to us for traditional. Your customers are leaving. I cut him off. Sales have dropped 40% in 3 years. The only thing keeping you afloat was Catherine's creative accounting, and that stops now. Catherine flinched. I was trying to save us. You were hiding the truth. I corrected her, just like you've all been doing for years. Well, that ends today. I laid out the new management structure. My team would handle operations, finance, and marketing. My family would retain ceremonial positions, the face of the brand, but with no real power. You're destroying everything we built, my mother whispered. No, I replied calmly. I'm saving it. You just can't see that yet. The changes weren't easy. My parents fought every modernization attempt. Catherine sulked in her new role as brand ambassador, stripped of any real authority. But slowly, inevitably, the numbers began to turn around. 3 months after the takeover, sales increased for the first time in years. 6 months in, we opened our first new location, a modern concept restaurant that blended the Morrison tradition with contemporary dining trends. It was an immediate success. 1 year to the day after I took control, I called another family meeting, this time in the flagship restaurant, after hours. The numbers speak for themselves, I said, handing out the latest reports. Revenue is up 60%. Customer satisfaction has increased by 45%. The Morrison Restaurant Group is not just surviving, it's thriving. My father studied the reports with grudging admiration. Even he couldn't deny the turnaround. Why? Catherine asked suddenly. Why save us at all? You could have let us fail, after how we treated you. I walked to the window, looked out at the city lights. Because success isn't about revenge. It's about proving something to yourself, not others. We were wrong, my mother said quietly. It was the first time I'd ever heard her admit a mistake. About you, about everything. I turned back to them. Yes, you were. But that's not why I did this. Then why? My father asked. Because 15 years ago, you threw away a daughter you thought was useless. Instead of destroying me, it made me stronger. I built something bigger than you could imagine. And now, I smiled slightly. Now I'm teaching you how to build something too. Catherine stood up, straightened her shoulders. Teach me. At our surprised looks, she continued. I mean it. Everything I thought I knew about business was wrong. I want to learn. Really learn, not just pretend. I studied my sister, seeing something new in her eyes, humility, and maybe a spark of real ambition. Okay, I said finally. Be in my office tomorrow at 8 a.m. We'll start with basic financial analysis, real numbers this time, not creative accounting. Over the next few months, something unexpected happened. As the business transformed, so did my family. Catherine threw herself into learning, showing a genuine talent for marketing when she wasn't trying to fake success. My father, freed from day-to-day management, became a valuable brand ambassador, telling the story of our restaurant's evolution. Even my mother found a role, using her social connections to build partnerships with local suppliers and charities. 1 year and 6 months after the takeover, we sat in my office for a different kind of meeting. The board has reviewed your performance, I told them. Based on the results, we're prepared to adjust the management structure. You're giving us back control? My father asked hopefully. No, I smiled. But I am offering you real positions in the company, based on merit, not family ties. Catherine, you've shown remarkable growth in marketing. Dad, your community outreach program has been incredibly successful. Mom, your supplier relations program has cut our costs by 15%. I handed them each a folder. These are your new contracts. Real positions, real responsibilities, real accountability. Your choice if you want to accept them. They opened the folders silently. Catherine's eyes widened at her new title, Vice President of Brand Development. Why now? She asked. Because you've earned it, I replied simply. Not because you're family, but because you've proven you can add value to this company. That's something I had to learn the hard way. My father looked up from his contract. We were so wrong about you, about everything. Yes, I agreed. But being wrong isn't the end. It's what you learn from it that matters. I stood up, walked to my window, the same window where I'd stood the day I took control of their company. 15 years ago, you kicked out a daughter you thought was useless. Today, that daughter is offering you a chance to be part of something bigger than yourselves. The question is, are you ready to learn? They signed the contracts without hesitation. Not out of desperation this time, but with a new understanding of what it means to earn success. The useless daughter they'd thrown away had become not just their savior, but their teacher. And maybe that was the greatest revenge of all. Not destroying them, but showing them a better way to build something lasting. The family that had once cast me out now looked to me for leadership. The sister who had mocked my ambitions now learned at my side. The parents who had dismissed my dreams now saw them become reality. Sometimes success isn't about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about being strong enough to show them how to be right.